Thanks. Yeah. Okay. So this, all you do now is everyone's got the proportions. Yeah. You bring it to a boil, bring it to a simmer, and you simmer it for 20 to 30 minutes. Do it for 30 minutes, right? And then after you've magically done that, which is what we have over here, a nicely simmered batch.
Is the honey in there also?
No, not yet.
Just the water and the berry.
Yeah, just the water and the berries. And so I'm going to mash up. I'm going to mash up the elderberry water concoction. So who here actually uses elder? I know Jaden does. Yeah.
Well, I do, but if you, yeah, because it's supposed to be just really good in preventing colds and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, totally.
But they were selling little bottles here of elderberry juice. Last year, I think.
Really, an elderberry juice.
Yeah.
That's an impressive undertaking.
Yeah, it was expensive.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah, and you can get there's some health food stores also, an elderberry kind of syrup thing that I think comes from one of the, like Denmark or Sweden or something like that.
It's an old European remedy, of course, right? Yeah, please.
Take a look.
Yeah, of course.
They're really tiny and bitter, aren't they?
Very. We'll have a taste of them afterwards.
Yep.
This is your coffee?
I mean, you can use the flowers. Does anyone use the flowers? Okay. The best remedy for a cold is, does anyone sweat out colds? Do you know how to sweat out a cold?
Hot tub?
No. If you have one, then even better. But you can take elderflowers and ginger, or elderflowers and bone set, and you make like a strong tea. You take it every half hour until you feel the sweat coming on. Then take like a hot shower, a hot bath, and go to bed with all your covers and your pajamas on. Sweat, change, in the middle of the night if you need to. And by the morning, probably 80% of the time, your cold will be gone. So it's the most efficient way of getting rid of a cold that I know of.
Leak it out to the borders.
Exactly. The other way is bleeding, but that's a little bit of a different conversation.
However, you'll have days of laundry to do.
You'll have days of laundry. Keeps you active. So you mash these up.
That's not the same as using leeches.
No. In my acupuncture practice, I do bleeding. It's a very traditional part of acupuncture. And for chronic stuff, for heat conditions, for colds, for flus, there is nothing like it. It's amazing. It's only a drop of blood. It's stigmatized, right? So people don't really, a lot of people aren't perhaps open to it. But it's wonderful. Well, let's say, for example, last week I was treating a client of mine who has peripheral venous disease. So she has claudication in her lower leg, like pain in the lower leg when she walks. I've treated her about 4 or 5 times just with acupuncture, and she'd get a couple of days relief, and then after that it would come back. And then I treated her once with bleeding and acupuncture, and she said it basically flipped a switch, and she's much better. Well, do you know to test blood sugar, you know how the diabetic needles, right? So you just use that, and then I do use disposable cups, so basically suction cups, which draws out a certain amount of the stagnancy.
The leech principle.
It's the leech principle, exactly, without the leeches, which of course are making a comeback. So you mash these up, so back to the elders, which of course have been part of European herbalism for centuries. Shakespeare talks about them. They used to hang elders over the door jambs to ward off witches. That would be. I want a picture of that. I like that.
That did cross my mind.
On a really bad day, right?
There are good witches.
There are good witches. Yeah, I'm making no value judgment.
Leech is the old English word for what we would call a physician.
What is it? What prepared for?
What we would call a physician.
Cooking lessons. Well, elderberry syrup lessons. So this is actually coming to the boil. So then, now that I have mashed these up, I'm going to strain out the hard bits.
Yeah, I have little stems
Yeah, you want to avoid the stems as much as possible. They use elder bark as a medicine, but they say to take out the stems because it's supposedly in one place I read that there's a toxin in it. I don't know if that's true, but it's worth
Better
taking them out.
safe than sorry.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know
So
anyone
when you
who's.
mash it, wouldn't you be breaking up the stems?
Well, I hope the stems are out of this.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Then filter that.
And elder is also, besides being an immune stimulant, it's also a demulcent, so which means that it coats mucous membranes.
Oh, what is that word again?
Demulcent, M-U-L-C-E-N-T.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's like a mucous membrane coater, basically. It's also expectorant, so it helps to expectorate phlegm. It's also a medic, so it can cause vomiting. It can also cause diarrhea, so don't take too much of it. You have to be quite paced with it.
Okay. For the dose.
Yeah. Of the syrup, preventatively, you take about a tablespoon a day. Probably like a teaspoon for children. It's a safe remedy for kids. The only contraindication would be with because of the honey. Well, obviously you can't give it to children under 1 year old. Okay,
Oh,
so
I
you.
didn't know that. You can't give honey to kids under 1 year.
Yeah.
Oh, why is that?
I can't remember the
They
exact.
can't.
That's it. Yeah, yeah.
What
yeah.
is it?
Unpasteurized honey. It's more with like the industrial it's smaller scale, chances of botulism being in the honey are similar.
You can't give honey to kids under 1 year.
Yeah, I've heard that.
because of botulism.
Okay, so now we have our base, the base of the syrup, and then
Probably.
the 1 cup of honey on top of that. And this will keep for a couple of months in the fridge. If you want to make a super long lasting one, instead of the water, you use vinegar. It won't taste as good.
Apple cider.
I would use apple cider vinegar, definitely.
Oh.
Get,
So 2 cups of apple cider vinegar then.
yeah,
What about 1 cup of water, 1 cup of apple cider vinegar?
I think it'd be worth a try.
That would keep
Half as long. Only for 5 years instead of 10 years. Better turn this down. So the beautiful thing about these home remedies that I'm going to be demonstrating, I'll be here the first Saturday of every month demonstrating some home remedies, is just how easy they are. You know, it's so easy to make these things that make it super easy to integrate herbs into our life. And for me, like, on top of good nutrition and exercise and sleep, like, you know, the herbs are kind of like the coup de grace. You know, you can really work with your vital energy and with what's happening with you, and, you know, you can really kind of start to steer the vital energy in really interesting and effective ways. Nudge, let's call it nudge.
There's a caution for the very young around honey. What about for the very old?
That's a good question. So for as soon as you hit about 70, then the recommended dosage for herbs goes down. So I always, with my clients when I prescribe herbs, with everyone, right? Because, you know, people can be allergic to anything.
Yeah.
You know, like the chances are of being allergic to elder are very, very small. Chamomile a little bit higher. But I always start really, really low, and then it's about, I can't remember exactly, but by 80, it's about half of the regular dosage. So if 15 milliliters of tincture would turn into 7.5. Yeah.
What is the difference between concentration and dosage?
Between concentration and dosage?
Dose and dosage are the same, or?
Dose and dosage are the same, yeah.
But
Are you talking about like a 1 to 5 or a 10 to 1, or is that what you're?
we're fighting fluoride.
What's that?
We're trying to fight the fluoride in our drinking water.
Oh, okay.
So when they speak of concentration of 0.7 0.7 milligrams per liter.
Yeah.
They also mean it's the same, it's dose as well?
No, no, no. Concentration is just showing, like, you know, the obvious. It's showing how much is in there.
But when they speak glowingly of optimum levels,
Yeah.
so if the concentration, they lowered the concentration of fluoride from 1 milligrams per liter to 0.7 now
Okay.
because of dental fluorosis.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean you can only, that's the daily doses also 0.7?
No, I don't think the two are connected.
They probably add, they would take what the average individual would consume of that water on a daily basis, and then according to that, that's how much fluoride they add. So maybe they found
Who's ready to try it?
people were consuming more water, so that's why they've lowered the concentration.
It's super tasty. Yeah, so feel free to come up and grab a spoon. And why don't you try some? It's really nice. Rosemary, Roland, would you like to give it a try? It's not, be careful, but it's not super hot. Because it's not this one, but yeah. It's the easiest way to get kids to take prophylactically. Yeah. No double dipping, yeah. You can have another, if you want another one, you can have another spoon. I brought all these spoons out and half of them are for you.
So they would add according to how much
Rosemary?
a child would consume.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It's good, eh? Yeah. Yeah, no. Totally, yeah. So preventatively, it's like for an adult, it's a tablespoon a day, right? And then if you have a cold or a flu, then like I'd take a tablespoon every few hours. Yeah. And for a kid, for you, I'd probably say like a teaspoon, but you could sneak a tablespoon and it'd be okay.